You ever notice how empty the sailboat docks are these days? I mean, back in the 70s and 80s, marinas were packed with masts, forests of them. But now, it's mostly powerboats, jet skis, and a few lonely sailboats bobbing in the corner like forgotten relics. And that's not just your imagination. Sailboats are dying off, fast. Out of over 11 million boats in the United States, sailboats make up less than 1%, and last year, they were less than 0.5% of all new boat sales. That's not just a dip, that's a collapse. So why is this happening? Why are fewer and fewer people choosing sails over throttles? Well, I've been around sailboats most of my life and I've got some thoughts. I've also been digging through Reddit threads, talking to other sailors, and watching the trends. And today, I want to break down 5 big reasons why sailing is slipping away, and what no one really wants to admit about it. Let's get into it. From the dock, sailboats can look like a tangled mess of ropes, winches, and strange hardware. To someone who's never sailed before, it's like staring at a foreign machine. Nothing makes sense, and everything looks like it might break something if you touch it wrong. That's the first big reason people shy away. Sailboats look complicated. And let's be honest, they kind of are, at least at first glance. There are halyards and sheets, blocks and cleats, travelers, reefing lines, and boom vangs. The mast is bristling with lines, and the cockpit usually has just enough going on to make a newcomer feel completely out of their depth. If you've never been on a sailboat before, it's no surprise that you'd think, no way I could ever learn all this. But here's the truth. Once you're actually sailing, you're usually only using a few lines at a time. Most of that mess on deck, it's not all in play at once. In fact, many cruising sailboats are set up to be sailed by just one person. Still, that initial visual chaos is enough to scare off a lot of curious folks before they ever give it a try. Then there's the language. Sailing has its own set of terms, most of which sound like pirate slang if you're new. You're not pulling a rope, you're trimming a sheet. The bathroom is a head, the kitchen's a galley. This stuff adds another layer of intimidation that powerboating just doesn't have. You turn the key, push the throttle, and off you go. Now, some of us love that sailing has depth, that there's always something new to learn. But for beginners, it can feel like a wall instead of a welcome mat. And in a world where everything is designed to be fast, easy, and intuitive, sailing doesn't make the best first impression. Even the idea of taking a class can be off-putting. Some yacht clubs and sailing schools turn a simple afternoon hobby into a multi-week certification process. While their intentions are good, it makes sailing feel exclusive and elite, something you have to earn instead of just try. The irony is that you can teach yourself the basics of sailing in an afternoon on a little dinghy. But most people never get to that point because the learning curve looks steep, even if it isn't. That perception keeps docks empty, schools struggling for new students, and would-be sailors stuck on land. So, is sailing really too complicated? No, not once you get into it. But it sure looks that way to anyone standing on the outside. And in a world where first impressions are everything, that's a big part of why sailboats are quietly disappearing. Sailing takes time. Not just the sailing part, but the whole process. Getting the boat ready, getting out of the slip, raising the sails, navigating the wind, then doing it all again in reverse to come back in. And while that might sound like part of the fun for some of us, for most folks these days, that's a major problem. People are busier now than ever. Between work, family, and the million little things that fill up a weekend, it's hard to carve out 5 or 6 solid hours just to get out on the water, and that's if everything goes smoothly. Add in weather delays, maintenance issues, or unexpected chores at the dock, and your relaxing afternoon can easily turn into a full-day commitment. Sailing doesn't fit neatly into a 2-hour window. Powerboats do. You can be on the water and cruising at 30 knots within minutes. Anchor, out for a swim, blast some music, eat a sandwich, and be back at the dock in time for your kid's soccer game. That's what people want now. Fast access to fun. Instant payoff. But with sailing, everything moves slower, and that's kind of the point. You feel the wind, adjust the sails, tune into the water. It's immersive, peaceful, and deeply satisfying, if you have the time for it. The problem is, most people don't. At least not regularly. Even seasoned sailors struggle with this. You look at your schedule and you think, I could go sailing today, but by the time I get the boat ready and get out there, it'll be time to turn around. That mindset eats away at motivation. The boat sits. The lines stay tied. Another weekend slips by. The other issue is that many people think they need perfect conditions to sail. If the wind isn't just right, or if it's too hot, too cold, or even too cloudy, they'll skip it. So even when someone does have a free afternoon, they might not go because it doesn't seem worth the setup, and that's how sailing starts to fade. Not in one big dramatic collapse, but through a slow drip of not today and maybe next weekend. Sailboats become something people used to use, a dream they chase in retirement, a hobby that it collects dust. The truth is, sailing asks you to slow down, to unplug, unwind, and enjoy the journey. But for the average person juggling work, errands, and everyday chaos, that can feel more like a burden than a blessing. So yeah, sailing takes time, and in this world, time is one thing most people just don't feel like they have. This is one of the biggest reasons sailing is fading. Younger generations just aren't buying sailboats, not because they don't like the idea of it, but because the path to ownership feels completely out of reach. Start with the obvious: money. The average 20 or 30-something today is dealing with student debt, high rent, rising costs, and tighter paychecks. Dropping even $5,000 or $10,000 on a used boat, plus dock fees, insurance, and maintenance, is a tough sell. Even if the price is fair, it's still a lot to spend on something that doesn't fit neatly into a busy, unpredictable schedule. Then there's the culture. Sailing still carries this image of exclusivity, a rich man's game. Yacht clubs with dress codes and long waiting lists, sailing schools with expensive multi-week classes. For a generation that grew up with YouTube tutorials and DIY everything, the idea of needing permission to get started feels outdated. If the barrier to entry is high, most people will just walk away. Also, younger people are chasing different kinds of adventure. They want mobility, flexibility, and experiences they can fit into short bursts of free time. Things like kayaking, paddleboarding, and van life are booming because they're easy to get into and don't come with the same costs or commitments. Sailing? It still asks a lot. Even trailerable boats need storage, maintenance, and time. And if you don't grow up around it or have someone to teach you, it feels like an insider's club that's hard to break into. That doesn't mean young people aren't interested. Plenty of them want to sail. They watch sailing channels, dream about crossing oceans, and follow the stories of liveaboards and world cruisers. But for most, that dream stays a fantasy. The leap from watching it to doing it feels too big. And that's the real problem. Sailing hasn't evolved fast enough to meet younger generations where they are. The boats, the systems, the expectations, they're still rooted in an older world. Until that changes, sailboat ownership will keep slipping further out of reach for the next wave of potential sailors. Boomers are the generation that made sailing big. They were the ones filling marinas in the 70s and 80s, riding the wave of the post-oil crisis sailboat boom. They took ASA courses, joined yacht clubs, and bought up Flicka 20s, Catalina 30s, and every pocket cruiser in between. Sailing was their thing, but time is moving on. Many of those sailors are now aging out of the lifestyle. Some are selling their boats because they can't physically handle them anymore. Others are giving up sailing altogether as health or family needs take priority. And sadly, many boats are hitting the market simply because their owners have passed away. This is creating a slow but steady vacuum in the sailing world. Boats are showing up on classifieds, sitting idle in marinas, or gathering dust in boatyards. But the issue isn't just that these boats are being sold, it's that there's not a new generation ready and willing to take them on. Unlike boomers, younger people didn't grow up sailing in the same numbers. They didn't have the same access to cheap boats, summer sailing camps, or parents who kept a day sailor in the driveway. So when a well-loved sailboat goes up for sale, there's often no one standing in line to take the torch. It's not just about boat ownership either. Boomers also brought the energy to the sailing scene. They organized regattas, ran the clubs, taught the courses, kept the lifestyle alive. As they retire from those roles, or move on altogether, that energy is harder to replace. And while the passion for sailing is still alive in many of them, there's a growing reality that it's becoming harder to maintain. Sailing is physical. It takes strength, balance, and endurance. As the years add up, even the most die-hard sailor eventually reaches a point where hoisting the main or grinding a winch just isn't fun anymore. This generational shift isn't anyone's fault. It's just the natural passage of time, but it leaves a big hole in the sailing world. One that isn't being filled fast enough. If no new hands grab the tiller, the boats will keep piling up, and the culture that boomers built will quietly drift away with them. Let's face it, sailboats are slow. That's not a knock, it's just the truth. If you're sailing a 30-foot cruiser, you're likely topping out at around 6 knots, maybe 7 on a good day, with the wind at your back and your sails trimmed just right. Compare that to a powerboat of the same size that can hit 25 to 30 knots without breaking a sweat. It's no contest in terms of speed. For most people, that's a deal breaker. When you only have a few hours on a weekend or an afternoon after work, the last thing you want is to spend it crawling across the water. You want to get there, fast, whether there is the next island, a restaurant dock, or your favorite swimming spot. With a powerboat, you're zipping around like a car on the freeway. With a sailboat, you're more like a bicycle in a world of Teslas. And in today's culture, speed is king. People want everything fast. Fast internet, fast food, fast delivery. We're used to instant gratification. Sailing just doesn't deliver that. It asks you to slow down, be patient, and wait for the wind. That can be a beautiful thing, but for most modern boaters, it feels like a waste of time. Even getting the boat ready takes longer. You can't just start the engine and go. You've got to check the rigging, prep the sails, untangle lines, and make sure everything's in order. Then you get out of the marina, raise the sails, adjust course, trim things in, and finally, you're off. By then, your buddy with the bowrider is already anchored with a drink in hand. And when it's time to go home, it's the same story. You're looking at another few hours of slow, steady sailing, or motoring, which is usually even slower on a sailboat. Meanwhile, the powerboat folks are already trailered up and driving home. Now, for people like me, that slowness is part of the charm. You're not racing anywhere, you're enjoying the ride, listening to the water, feeling the wind, watching the world drift by. But that's a specific kind of joy, a quieter, older kind. And it's not what most people are after. Speed gives you flexibility. If the weather turns or plans change, a powerboat can get you back fast. If you're on a sailboat and the wind dies, you're either drifting or crawling home under a tiny diesel engine. That unpredictability adds a layer of stress that many people just don't want to deal with. So yeah, sailboats are too slow for most folks. Not because slow is bad, but because it doesn't fit with how people live today. If time is limited, and the goal is to get the most out of every minute, sailing just doesn't compete. It's not the boat for the busy, it's for the patient, the deliberate, the ones who care more about the journey than the destination. And these days, that's a rare breed. So there it is, 5 big reasons why sailboats are fading from the spotlight, and why more and more slips sit empty while the roar of outboards fills the marinas. It's not because sailing is dead. Far from it, but the world around it has changed. People are short on time, high on stress, and always chasing the fastest, easiest option. And sailing? Well, it asks you to do the opposite. To slow down, to pay attention, to learn, to work a little harder for the reward. And maybe that's why I still love it. Because when you raise the sails and shut off the engine, there's a kind of peace you just can't get any other way. No fumes, no noise, just wind, water, and the quiet hum of the hull slipping through the waves. Sailing isn't for everyone, and maybe it never was. But if you're the kind of person who doesn't mind going slow, who's okay with a little challenge, and who finds joy in the journey itself, then sailing might be exactly what you've been missing. Thanks for watching. If this hit home, or made you think, hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Are you a sailor holding the line, or someone who's still thinking about jumping in? Either way, I'll see you out there.